So as I said, we're going to be covering asexual versus asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which you get genetic material, or your genes from both your mom and your dad. So your egg for a female and your sperm for a male. Those are both called your sex cells. Okay, when the egg cell and sperm cell join together, it's called fertilization, and a zygote is formed. Advantages of sexual reproduction: you have diverse offspring because they get there's genetic variation because they get DNA from mom and DNA from dad, which ends in variety. So the individuals within the population have differences that make them better able to survive. Another advantage is selective breeding. It's used to develop many types of plants and animals that have traits that we want. So better plants, larger animals, and pets that we are looking for certain traits from. Disadvantages of sexual reproduction: it takes time and energy. Organisms have to grow and develop until they're old enough to produce sex cells, so the sperm and the egg. And you have to search and find a mate, which will expose you to predators, diseases, harsh environmental conditions, and fertilization can't take place during pregnancy. And pregnancy can last as much as 2 years in some mammals. These are some examples of animals that engage in sexual reproduction, such as dogs, plants, trees, spiders. Ugh. Asexual reproduction is what we're really going to focus on today. Asexual reproduction is a form of reproduction in which there is one parent instead of sexual reproduction where there is two. Okay, so the organism can reproduce without fertilization. Okay, and because of this, they produce uniform offspring. So they're all the same. Okay, they're genetically identical. They have the same genes as their parent. Okay, so different types of asexual reproduction. The first is binary fission. Okay, fission is when there is cell division in prokaryotes. Remember, prokaryotes only do not have a nucleus. And it forms two genetically identical cells, like identical twins. DNA is copied, the cell begins to grow longer, the cell membrane kind of pinches inward, and it splits into two identical cells, okay? And this has an equal division of cytoplasm, okay? And there are some examples, including bacteria and pond critters that go through budding. Budding is when a new organism grows off of the body of its parent, okay? So the bud or the baby, the offspring, is identical to the parent, and when it's large enough, it'll break off and live on its own, okay? So yeast does this, a hydra, which is in our picture, does this, and cactuses do this. Fragmentation occurs when an offspring grows from a piece of its parent. So a fragment is like a small piece, okay? And this can happen in two different ways. It can produce new organisms. For example, a starfish, okay? As well as producing new body parts, like a gecko. We know that geckos, when they get scared, they get rid of their tail, okay? And it can regrow that tail, which is regeneration. Okay, this happens because they have stem cells, which are unspecialized cells. Okay, vegetative propagation. Okay, obviously our keyword is vegetable or vegetative. Is a uniform offspring that grows from part of a plant. Okay, plants give off what is called runners, which is like long branches. Okay, and wherever that branch touches the soil or the ground, roots can grow for a new plant. Okay, and even if the runner is broken apart, a new plant can grow from that. And again, each new plant is the same and it's identical to its parent. Strawberries, potatoes, crabgrass, they all do that. Advantages of asexual reproduction. It enables organisms to reproduce without a mate, so they don't need another organism. Okay, so there's no wasted time and energy. It allows them, those organisms, to reproduce quickly and produce a lot of that offspring or those babies. Disadvantages, because their offspring are identical or they're the same, there's no genetic variation, so there's no variety in the genes. That can give the organism a better chance for survival. For example, if a weed killer can kill the parent, it can also kill the baby. And therefore the whole species can be wiped out from something like a disease. Also, if there's a mutation in the DNA, so if the DNA changes in some way, it'll be passed down to the baby, and the offspring will have that mutation as well. And these are some examples of some organisms that go through asexual reproduction. We have our cactus in there, we've got our hydra in there, all that fun stuff. All right, guys, thank you so much.